Hi everybody, my name is Craig and this is 5 minutes a day for December 6th, 2018. So hope y'all like the new camera, the new video quality, the new audio quality. I'm trying a few things, so hopefully this is better. Hopefully it's in focus. Today I'm going to try to talk about something a little more complicated, about a little bit about language and a little bit about the thing I talked about a couple days ago about how prejudice, discrimination are typically just mistakes in thinking. So 5 minutes starts now. So one of the things I think is really important to talk about is how language is what we make it. One of the really common mistakes people make when they talk about how things should be is they go back to the dictionary or etymology and say, well, this is how words used to be used, so that's how things are. And that's a reification error. It's making something that's not real. It's, it's confusing. It's kind of like confusing the map for the place. The map is a pointer to the place or a representation of the place, but it's not the place itself. The word is a reference to an idea or a phenomenon or a place. It's not the place or the idea or the phenomenon itself. It's a reference. And half the time our thoughts or the concept we're using is a reference to something else. And so we remake language and words to fit better what we're trying to convey. And that's, what happened with like racism, discrimination, bigotry. A lot of people are trying to define these words because ultimately if whoever can define the term gets to have some level of power over its use. And I think that's what it's really about, because words are, socially constructed. They follow kind of evolutionary principles. And so when it reaches like a critical mass of use, then that's how the word becomes, used. And one of the things I find is absolutely fascinating is that the language you use, your vocabulary, limits and kind of guides the way you think about the world. So if you don't have a word for something, it's a lot harder to think about that thing. That's why I love science, because at the beginning of pretty much any like journal article, peer-reviewed paper, they go through the literature review, which means they go back through the literature and bring the terms, bring the ideas, bring the concepts into their paper. And then they'll talk about what they're going to measure, and then they'll tell you how they're going to measure it. So they bring up a word and then say, I'm going to define this term this way and use it in this way to mean this thing. And it may not be the most common definition, but it's a known quality. And so now language in general use doesn't have all that rigor, and that's fine. It probably shouldn't. That's why communication is complicated, because you don't always know what the person across from you is saying. You know what they said, or you know what you heard them say, not what they actually intended to say. Sometimes, if you know a person really well, you know their heart, you know what their intentions are. Sometimes you can glean things if you've practiced with a person through like active listening skills, where they'll say something and then you repeat back to them what you think you heard, and then you can do that back and forth until you have a very clear understanding of what they meant to say. And it's a really good practice for any of your friends, and especially in close friendships and relationships, romantic relationships, partnerships, that you work on your communication so that when someone says something, they're not just making a mistake and thinking that you hear inside their head and what comes out of their mouth is equal to what's in their head, which it never usually is. And then what they hear is what was said, which isn't always true. And then what they hear is what they process, and that's not even the same. So there's like all these different levels in communication based on words that we don't have good definitions for, or they're being used in different ways, or we're trying to create words to convey new ideas or new meanings or new understandings of new meanings. Like in the psych world, autism was just kind of redefined. And there's a lot of language, a lot of ableist language that I've mentioned before in a previous video, and I'm just out of time, about how, I shouldn't really use the word dumb or stupid or idiot, because a lot of those words are pulled out of older discriminatory psychological stuff that basically it was a demeaning term for intellectually disabled or people that didn't think the way other people thought they should. And so they use these terms, and then the general public picked them up as derogatory. The term like retarded was one of those things, and that's why it's not used in the psych world anymore, and it's why a lot of people cringe, and rightfully so, with that word, because it's a derogatory term when it was made. Even though it comes out of music, the culture added a new meaning to it, and that meaning was mean and derogatory and gross. And so when that happened, the psych community had to go back and find new words that didn't have that baggage. And so I ran out of time, so I'm not going to keep going anymore. But yeah, so comment down below, tell me what you think about all that. As you can tell, I love communication. I love language. I love thinking. That's why I love philosophy. And it's interesting how complicated it is, and yet if we practice a little, it can become very simple again. So hope you'll have a great day. I will see you tomorrow. Yeah, great. See ya. Bye.